What if the signature that could save millions was the same one that might doom his daughter? Ethan Langford was minutes away from a $1 billion deal when a janitor screamed one line that shattered everything: secrets, betrayal, and a father's desperate fight to protect his child unfold in this gripping love and sacrifice story. Stay with us because what happens next will leave you breathless. Hey, Soul Stories fam. We've got a sweet and totally swoon-worthy love story for you today. Let's jump in. That morning, the city sky was as clear as glass. The windows of Langford Tower reflected the early sunlight into sharp, bright blades. 8:40 a.m., Ethan Langford's schedule ticked like a Swiss machine. Precisely 8:55 to the lobby, 900 into the car, 920 arrival at the Grand Meridian to sign the funding agreement for the Langford Initiative. A 2-year medical project with a multi-billion-dollar budget, marking the first time his private foundation partnered with a network of independent laboratories to accelerate research on rare neurological diseases. The press had already rolled out a red carpet of questions while shareholders counted every heartbeat against stock prices. All eyes were on a single signature. His personal secretary followed close behind, clutching a charcoal gray binder. "European partners are already seated," she whispered, urgent. "PR reminded me once you arrive, your remarks must not exceed 3 minutes and no open questions." Ethan nodded without looking. He had read the speech 3 times since dawn. At that moment, his phone buzzed lightly. The wallpaper showed a shaky, scribbled yellow circle. Lily's trembling drawing from last night. She had insisted on sketching a sunrise for him to carry for good luck. The strokes wavered, the curves lopsided. Neurosepic decay syndrome had its own way of gnawing childhood through circles that never closed. Ethan paused briefly at the lobby carpet's edge. "Send a note to Dr. Patel," he told his secretary. "Remind her to double-check Lily's noon transfusion. I want the updated chart in my inbox before 11. "Yes, sir." The glass doors slid open like a mute switch to the outside world. 2 bodyguards in black suits, Marcus Graves in front, another behind, escorted him down the steps. Glossy black sedan waited back door ajar. Ethan set foot on the last step, his mind already on the signing, on questions about data transparency, on how his stroke of a pen today would lock in 2 years of financial commitment. Then the scream split the morning. "Don't get in the car." The raw, urgent tone was so jagged it seemed to halt the wind itself. Ethan gripped the doorframe. Graves lunged forward, arms sweeping wide, voice a harsh bark, "Stand back." A figure burst out from the staff side exit, gray uniform, hair hastily tied under a cap, rubber gloves blotched with bleach stains. A face slick with sweat and fear, crystalline and unfined. "Please don't let him get in the car." The voice tore out again like the last rope flung against a rushing tide. In that split second, everything froze into a razor-sharp still. Stone steps, the cool door handle, and the eyes of the woman. Clara Brooks, wide with unmasked terror. "Detain her," Graves ordered. The second guard twisted her wrists smoothly, pinning Clara. Radios hissed. Side gates slammed shut. Within 3 seconds, the front of Langford Tower had transformed into a military runway. Yellow tape unfurled as if pre-measured. Canines rushed forward and explosive ordnance teams sprinted along the driveway. Ethan pulled his hand back from the car door, as if from a cliff edge, straightened, gaze fixed on Clara, from the street. A few press cameras had already swung toward him, shutters snapping like out-off's rain. "Sir, we have to go." His secretary whispered, her voice warped with tension. "The signing. Wait, just one word from Ethan." Flat held in the same calm with which he had once watched. Markets plunged 5% in a single afternoon. He turned to Graves. "Emergency protocol, 10 minutes. Then I'll switch to another car." "Understood." The forecourt filled with the metallic temps of chemicals and disinfectant. A technician slid beneath the sedan like a lizard. Flashlight cutting into pools of pitch-black shadow. Another dismantled panel under the hood, sensors beeped, dogs sniffed. Hard-soled shoes struck stone in a cadence of tense percussion. Clara was pressed against the glass wall, wrists chilled by cuffs. Her breath came ragged, her eyes locked on Ethan. "Who are you?" Graves asked, voice like iron. "Night shift janitor." I work on the factory floor. I saw she swallowed dryly. He mustn't. Get in that car? Reason? Graves pressed harder. Her answer fell into the void, drowned out by a sharp clear from the sweep team. The technician shook his head. Undercarriage empty, dashboard clean. The back seat held only a file folder and a silver sign and pen. Ethan checked his watch. 9,007. Arrival at Grand Meridian in 13 minutes was now impossible. 100 wires jerked at once inside him. What investors would read on their screens? Whether PR had a plan B? How legal would react if he derailed a signing because of a janitor's scream? Then another wire, thinner, dimmer, tightened. Lily, the crooked circle, the stubborn liver. Enzyme levels. The fourth line is always flushed with antiseptic. Daddy, did I draw the circle almost round yet? Sir? The secretary's voice cracked. You? The scanner went silent. The commander removed his headset. Nothing detected. Vehicle is clear. The yellow tape fell curtain-like. The crowd buzzed. Security. Chief turned to Ethan. Apologies for the inconvenience. We're ready to proceed. Ethan didn't answer at once. He looked at Clara. She was still pinned to the wall, breathing hard, lips blue with strain. Closer, he noticed bleach-stained nails, dark circles etched by sleepless nights, details too raw to fake.
Oh.
Take her out of here, a police officer said. Public disturbance. Obstruction. Clara lifted her head. She knew she was about to be dragged away, the cuffs snapping shut on a day already ruined. Maybe on her job, on the only health insurance keeping Maya alive, in the span of a single breath. She locked eyes with Ethan. Not with a CEO, but with a father. She had only one line left. One line that had to hit where no one else could see. Her voice came rough, deliberate, laying each word like a stone on a fragile bridge. Neuroseptic decay syndrome. The last syllable struck the stone like molten metal. Movements around them seemed suddenly unplugged. Ethan froze. His schedules, speeches, and fundraising pitches all blurred into a backdrop. He heard that term again in a hospital room, Dr. Patel pronouncing it softly behind a mask. Heard it again in Lily's fractured breast at night, thin as threads. His eyes faltered in a slip he couldn't hide. Clara saw it. The door. The officer jerked her arm. Enough. The cuffs bit deeper. She hissed in pain, but her eyes stayed on Ethan. No pleading, no clawing, just one message. I know what you're hiding, and it's in danger. Graves looked at his boss, awaiting orders. He had stood with Ethan through all-night acquisitions, through negotiations with men who never smiled. He recognized this rare instant when a man fell out of the mold of billionaire CEO, and back into 3 letters. Dad. 9/11s. The Grand Meridian was already in chaos over the delay. The secretary took her 4th call in 3 minutes, face-pale voice. Offering frantic apologies about traffic and a minor security issue, Ethan inhaled deep and slow, pulling air into lungs clenched by a keyword to the heart. He turned toward the officer. Wait. Silence fell. Camera lenses pivoted toward him. His gaze returned to Clara. Your name? Clara Brooks. She stammered, lips dry, voice husky from fear and from a flicker of hope. Ethan nodded faintly like a pin slotting into place. He no longer looked at the car. The sedan door still gaped open, a polished black hole. He turned to Graves. Take her to the 50th floor. No one approaches her and informed Grand Meridian. The signing is postponed. The secretary froze as if hearing a breach of natural law. But sir, postponed, Ethan repeated, voice flat, neither raised nor lowered. I'll take responsibility. In an instant, the media flock scattered like startled birds. Shareholders' phones buzzed with messages. The PR team at Grand Meridian swapped slides to technical delay. European partners reset their noon schedule, sipping coffee with measured discontent. On the sidelines as someone typed the first headline. Langford Initiative signing thrown into chaos by security scare. Clara was pulled from the glass wall. The cuffs still dug into her wrists, but her arms felt lighter. The invisible scales had shifted. She glanced up the steps, the lobby lights glowing gold, the elevator doors waiting open. She didn't know what awaited on the 50th floor, only that she had flung a rope, and the other end had caught on the only hook that could hold. Graves walked beside her, one hand maintaining a safe distance, the other signaling security. Ethan followed last, glancing once more at the glossy black sedan, declared, "Clean." As if at a door, someone had shouted, "Don't open." In his mind, Lily's whisper from last night brushed through. "Daddy, my circle's almost round." He didn't know why a janitor knew the name of that disease. He didn't know why a clean car weighed on his chest like stone. He only knew this. If a single scream could make him miss $1 billion signing, then the answer on the 50th floor might be worth his entire life. The elevator doors closed, swallowing the lobby's noise. The minute hand ticked forward. The morning of a perfect day had cracked, and sometimes only when it cracks do we see what spills from the fault lines. The elevator door seals shut, carrying 3 people upward. The metallic hum of cables sliding through pulleys sounded colder than usual. Ethan stood tall, his face as taut and flawless as glass. Clara was wedged between Graves and a security officer, wrists still locked in steel cuffs. She stayed silent, hearing only the pounding of her own heartbeat. The 50th floor opened into a space like a glass box in the sky. A massive black stone table dominated the center, reflecting the city's light. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline of towers that pierced the clouds. Here, every decision reached beyond stock values, touching the lives of thousands. "Seat her," Ethan ordered, his voice low and clipped. Clara was shoved into a chair. Its swivel base skidded slightly across the polished wood floor. Ethan circled the table, unfastened his suit jacket, and tapped his fingers against the glossy surface. "You just made me late for the most important signing of the past 2 years," he said, each word falling with icy weight. "You have 5 minutes. If in those 5 minutes I don't hear a reason worth my time, I'll personally send you to the basement. And from there, you'll never lift your head again." Claire raised her face. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her gaze was steady, unflinching. "I didn't come to sabotage you, Mr. Langford. I just need you to listen to me once, because if you don't, someone will die. Maybe even your daughter." Graves narrowed his eyes, hand hovering over his radio. Ethan raised a hand to stop him. "Talk." Clara drew in a breath, her voice trembling yet clear. "My sister Maya, 16 years old. 6 months ago, doctors diagnosed her with neurosaptic decay syndrome, the same condition as your daughter." The room stilled. Ethan's grip clenched hard around the armrest of his chair. "What did you just say?" "Maya also has NIS," Clara continued, eyes brimming but unwavering. "I worked the night shift as a janitor on the research floors. I often saw files torn apart and tossed into the shredder bins. I picked them out and pieced them together. Inside were trial results. They were falsified, sir. Patients in the study showed no improvement. Some even died." She stopped gasping, but the official reports turned it into promising progress. "I know it sounds insane, but numbers don't lie. I pieced enough to see the truth. The data is being manipulated." Ethan said nothing. He remembered last night Lily's hand trembling so badly in her sleep that the pencil slid from her fingers. He recalled Finch's reply in the latest report. Side effects within safe limits, progress favorable. He had accepted it because he wanted to believe. "Do you have anything more concrete?" His voice came rough. "All I have are the fragments I piece together," Claire admitted, staring down at her callous hands. "Not enough for the court, but enough to know the truth." Ethan leaned back, eyes caught between disbelief and gnawing doubt. In his world, every piece of information required seals, signatures, and verification. The words of a janitor were grains of sand in a storm. Yet in her eyes, exhausted, desperate, but burning with a last spark of resolve. He saw his own reflection each time he sat by Lily's bed, powerless, watching her struggle to breathe. The 5 minutes had passed, but Ethan gave no order. He folded his arms, turned toward the windows, and gazed at the city pulsing below. The silence stretched until it felt suffocating. Clara bit her lip, whispering like she was throwing her final blade. "If I'm wrong, you can destroy me right here." But if I'm right, you could lose your daughter." The words slammed one door shut in Ethan's chest and opened another. Not the door of a CEO, but of a father. "Fine," he turned back, eyes flashing cold steel. "The only reason you're still breathing here is because I intend to verify this." Clara closed her eyes and exhaled long and heavy. She knew the first step was past. But the road ahead, that would be hell itself. Ethan Langford's penthouse at Langford Tower was a world apart from the cold research floors below. Gleaming spaces, minimalist furniture, and glass walls that opened to a boundless blue sky. But within that perfection, there was one small room no one was ever allowed to enter without his permission. Lily's room. The room was washed in soft yellow, its walls covered with drawings of circles, suns, and bursts of childish colors. Lily sat at her desk, her nightgown loose on her frail body. A colored pencil trembled in her tiny hand, shaking like a leaf. "In the wind, Daddy, let me try again." Her small voice rang out, forcing a smile. Ethan sat beside her, his tie still on, his $1 million suit jacket draped over his shoulder, but his eyes fixed only on the sheet of paper. Lily tilted her pencil, trying to draw a circle. The line wavered uneven, the end not meeting the beginning. "See," it broke again. She lowered her head, trying to hide the tears welling in her eyes. Ethan placed his hand over the page. "I see a circle already. A sun doesn't have to be perfect to shine, right?" Slowly, he drew a line connecting the gap, closing the shape, like Daddy helping you connect it, so the sun shines a little brighter. Lily lifted her face, a faint smile on her lips. "Tomorrow, I'll try again. Maybe I can finish it myself." Ethan nodded, brushing her fine, thinning hair. But when Lily turned to pick another color, he bowed his head, vision blurring. Those misshapen circles weren't just a child's shaky lines. They were cracks carved into his heart. He knew that tomorrow, like every other day, Lily would have to go down to the Langford Special Treatment Center for another round of procedures. Elsewhere in the city, Clara Brooks's basement apartment was the stark opposite. Peeling walls, a worn-out sofa, a flickering fluorescent light on the verge of dying. On the narrow bed lay Maya, 16, curled up, her hands clasped tightly together to hide her trembling. Clara set a steaming bowl of stew on the table and hurried to help her. "Sister, sit up. Just a little so you can take your meds." Maya shook her head, her face pale. "I'm too tired. My hands shake too much to even hold the spoon." Clara said nothing, just scooped up a spoonful, blew gently, and held it to her sister's lips. "One spoon. That's all. We have to keep fighting, Maya. I've never given up on you, and you can't give up either." Tears slid down Mia's cheek. "Why do kids like me have to wait for death, sis?" Clara pulled her close, holding her tightly. She wanted to say words of comfort, but her throat tightened. Instead, she whispered, "Tomorrow, you'll be admitted again for a few days. They said the next trial might help. There will be hope. Believe." Me. The dim light cast shadows over the two sisters as they were in their embrace. In that shabby apartment, love was the only thing that never ran out. But behind the consent form Clara had signed with the Langford Initiative, Maya was just another name on the list of trial patients. That night, as Ethan sat alone in his vast library, a glass of wine swirling in his hand, he suddenly remembered Clara's eyes on the 50th floor. They weren't the eyes of someone trying to sabotage or blackmail. They were the eyes of a desperate sister, just like his own eyes when he watched his daughter sleep, her hand still trembling. Two people from two different worlds. One billionaire in the highest penthouse, one janitor in a basement flat, but both bound by the same pain, watching the person they loved most being stolen away by a merciless disease. Their fates tied to the same research center. Ethan set his glass down, his hand trembling slightly. For the first time, he no longer saw Clara as a disruptor. He began to wonder if what she said was true. What truth was being hidden behind the Langford Initiative? Late at night, the 50th floor of Langford Tower lay silent. The green glow of computer screens flooded Ethan Langford's office. Dozens of digital reports sprawled across multiple monitors. He was accustomed to handling billions. in crossbar deals. Yet his heart had never pounded as heavily as it did now. The name Dr. Simon Finch appeared again and again on every document. Every clinical trial report bore his signature. At first glance, the numbers and growth charts were pristine. Exactly the kind of results the funding board wanted to see. But when Ethan pulled up the raw data for comparison, the anomalies became undeniable. Multiple results repeated word for word, only with different patient names, assistant doctors. Signatures copied and pasted from old files. Cases labeled as miraculous recovery, where the patient's records had been wiped clean. Ethan gripped the armrest of his chair, knuckles whitening. He didn't want to believe it. But these traces couldn't be a coincidence. Finch, what exactly are you hiding? The next morning, Clara was temporarily released pending further investigation, but kept under surveillance. Ethan summoned her. Woman in her worn janitor's uniform stood in his sunlit, glass-walled office as though two worlds that were never meant to touch had collided. You said your sister suffers from the same illness as Lily. Ethan braced his hands against the desk, his voice cold. What proof do you have that what you claim isn't fabricated? Clara didn't flinch. I don't have official proof, but I have eyes. She pulled a small, folded slip of paper from her pocket and carefully opened it with trembling fingers. It was a crude sketch of an IV bag. Cloudy amber fluid inside, the label stamped with the code ND74. In the research storage room, I saw these bags. I didn't know what they were, but that same day I visited Maya at the hospital, and Clara's throat tightened, and on Lily's bedside. I saw the exact same IV bag. Same color, same marking. Ethan froze. A chill surged through him as if doused in ice water. The image of Lily's small arm hooked to the IV line flashed before him, her face weary, but still forcing a smile. If those bags were part of unauthorized trials, then his daughter was being used as a living experiment. No, impossible, Ethan muttered, his hand clenching until his knuckles blanched. He inhaled sharply, but inside his composure fractured. His years running an empire without betraying emotion couldn't shield him now. Terror swelled inside him. He could lose Lily, and not to the disease, but to betrayal within the very project bearing his name. Clara's eyes locked on his unwavering. If you want to save Lily, we have to uncover the truth now. Ethan turned away, hiding the chaos flickering. In his gaze, but deep down, he knew. Clara was no longer just a disruptor. She was the key to unlocking the darkness he had never dared to face. Ethan Langford sat in his glass-walled office on the 50th floor, the city lights casting cold streaks. Across his face, on the desk lay stacks of medical reports, pages thick with red marks. Each word weighed heavier than ever because he knew they were tied directly to his daughter's life. Lily was still in her hospital room, her small hands trying to finish drawings. She could never quite complete, but behind those white walls, she had become patient number 47 in a trial he had never authorized. Ethan inhaled deeply, buttoned his vest, and pressed the intercom. Finch, I want to see you right now. The research wing was illuminated by fluorescent lights. Dr. Gregory Finch entered. Forcing a strange smile, a folder tucked under his arm. Mr. Langford, I assume you called to ask about the trial's progress. Everything is under control. Ethan fixed his eyes on him, his voice dropping low. I want you to explain why the reports contain duplicate data, why the biochemical results have been adjusted to look like success, and why is my daughter in the trial group without my consent? For a brief moment, Finch froze, then gave a dry laugh. You're overthinking. Those adjustments are just statistical corrections. As for Lily, we only wanted her to have access to the most advanced methods available. It's an act of kindness, not conspiracy. Ethan slammed the folder against the table, causing the pages to scatter like shards of glass. Don't play games with me. I funded this project to save children, not to turn them into lab rats. If you don't have a real answer, I'll deliver this. Entire file to the Federal Medical Board myself. For a heartbeat, Finch's face drained of color. He gripped the folder tightly, then lowered his voice. Mr. Langford, sometimes to achieve breakthroughs, sacrifices must be made. A few patients lost in exchange for thousands saved. You're a businessman? You must understand the rules of this game. Ethan clenched his fists. Those words rang in his ears like a death sentence hanging over his daughter's head. Clara appeared just after Finch left. Her janitor's uniform still reeked faintly of chemicals, but her eyes burned with urgency. "Do you believe me now?" she asked, her voice trembling yet fierce. Ethan was still engulfed in rage, but he gave a silent nod. "I overheard them in the storage." Clara went on. "Finch and his people are planning to liquidate assets. To them, patients are living evidence. If they erase it all, there will be nothing left to investigate." She drew a sharp breath, clutching the strap of her worn canvas bag. "Maya, my sister, is on that list.
Act.
And if you don't act, your daughter will be too." Ethan's chest constricted. Lily's eyes flashed before him, weary, yet filled with a will to live. He remembered the time she whispered, "Daddy, when I get better, can we go to the park together?" The thought that he, the very man funding the project, had unwittingly pushed her toward death, left him gasping. "Are you certain?" Ethan demanded. "I swear on my life," Clara replied without hesitation. That night, Ethan didn't go home. He sat alone in his office, staring through the glass at the fog-veiled city. Questions spiraled like a drill in his mind. If he stayed silent, his reputation would remain intact. The Langford empire secure, but if he stayed silent, Lily would die. He unlocked his phone. The screen lit up with a photo of Lily smiling weakly from her hospital bed. In that instant, every hesitation vanished. Ethan picked up a pen and began writing the first lines of an internal investigation journal. "If the truth is darkness, then I will be the one to hold the torch. Even if that torch burns my entire career to the ground," he whispered, like an oath carved into stone. "No one touches my daughter." Night fell over the city like a heavy black curtain draping over the glowing Langford Tower. In the top-floor office, Ethan Langford stood motionless before the glass wall, eyes fixed on the gridlock streets below. For years he had known nothing but billion-dollar negotiations and handshakes under the flash of cameras, yet never in his life had everything felt so fragile. One wrong decision, and he could lose Lily, his only daughter, the one life that kept him standing. Behind him, Clara trembled, her calloused hands clutching the edge of her gray janitor's uniform. She had just endured a grueling interrogation by Ethan and Marcus Graves. Her testimony, the scraps of shredded documents salvaged. From the lab, all pointed to one horrifying truth. Finch was preparing to liquidate the patient group, and Lily was patient number Yeti. Graves, the battle-hardened veteran with his stone-gray face, rasped in his growly voice. "Storming the lab hidden is suicide. Armed guards, thermal sensors, cameras everywhere." Clara hesitated. Then a flicker of resolve lit her eyes. "There's another way, a service tunnel through the chemical conduits. There were hardly any cameras there because no one would risk going into a toxic zone. I used to work in that sector. I know the pipes and the release valves. If we're careful, we can reach the Subel labs." Ethan spun around sharply. He took in Clara from head to toe, a janitor with a faded badge, her face worn thin from endless night shifts. A few days ago, he would have dismissed such an idea as reckless fantasy. But now, his child lay on the other side of that wall. "You're certain?" Ethan asked, his tone cold, but edged with urgency. Clara nodded. "Not sure I'll survive going back there, but I am certain of this. Finch won't let Lily live unless you act now." The room stiffened, the air thick with dread. Graves frowned, worry etched into his scarred features. "Ethan, you're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar empire, letting a janitor lead you through chemical tunnels. If this ever comes out, I don't care about reputation." Ethan cut him off, his voice hard. "I care about my daughter." In that moment, wealth and class dissolved into nothing. Before Clara stood, not the arrogant billionaire splashed across finance magazines, but a father, clinging to the last sliver of hope. Clara drew a deep breath, trying to mask her fear. "We have to move tonight. Finch will act before the police have enough evidence." Graves silently unholstered the pistol from his waistband, slid the magazine back into place, and muttered, "All right, but remember, Once we step inside, there's no turning back. Ethan looked at them both, a worn-out janitor and a veteran with a scar down his neck. He knew then this was no longer his fight alone. 3 people, 3 lives, bound by one goal, to wrest life back for those they loved. He picked up his phone, entered a few final commands to delegate responsibilities to his subordinates, then set it down. Moscow. In the dim light, their shadows merged into one as they prepared to descend into the dark tunnels where money and power meant nothing. Down there, only one thing could guide them: family and the will to survive. Still following the story? If this story found you outside of Soul Stories, we invite you home to where every touching tale begins with truth, hope, and heart. The night wind faded as they slipped away from the main building. Along the research wing side, a corroded drainage trench ran against a moss-clad concrete wall. Clara crouched, prying up a rusted grate with a crowbar borrowed from the maintenance depot. A rush of chemical fumes hit them, sharp, sickly, sweet, mingled with the metallic damp of long-abandoned pipes. The main conduit leads to the solvent treatment plant, Clara whispered through her filter mask. From there, a branch turns toward the sub-level labs. Cameras are sparse. Nobody expects anyone to crawl through a toxic waste channel. Graves checked his respirator and headlamp, then handed Ethan a fresh pair of nitro gloves. Stay close to me. No strong beams, only enough light to see. One by one, they slid inside. The pipe was barely wide enough for a human body. Its inner walls slick with decades of residue. Each shuffle of knees scraped fabric against metal with a faint hiss. The air was hot, acrid, and so thick that every breath carried a bitter film across their tongues. Clara led, her hands gliding over joints and wells as though reading Braille. 2 more turns. At the auxiliary vent, we'll hit a mesh screen. Past that, we're in the service tunnels. Ethan crawled close behind, his palms burning from friction. Years of polished boardrooms hadn't prepared him for the suffocating press, nor for the thought that with each second lost, Lily lay somewhere beyond these walls, a needle taped to her tiny arm. Graves raised a fist. Stop. Ahead, the airflow shifted, suddenly cool. He pressed his ear to the pipe, listening to a steady pulse. Exhaust fans, Clara whispered. During my night shifts, the system reduced load between 210 and 344 maintenance. We're inside that window. Less backdraft if we hurry. They reached the mesh barrier, a rusted steel crossframe. Clara pulled a battered hex key set from her pocket, her calloused fingers working each bolt. Slow but precise. Graves angled the light downward, slicing shadows thin as knives. Careful not to sweep across any hidden lenses. Click. The final bolt snapped loose. The screen tilted, opening a narrow crawl space. One by one, they dropped into the service tunnels. Space opened suddenly. A low ceiling. Pipelines sprawling like veins. A concrete floor stained with oil. In the distance, a cold glare of industrial lamps. Graves pressed a finger to his lips. The 3 of them hugged the wall, edging along a corridor barely wide enough for 2. Rubber cartwheels ground heavily on concrete somewhere ahead. Voices followed, muted, clipped as if trained for silence. They peered through a broken slat in the vent. Below stretched a cavernous bay, marked with yellow floor lines and a sign overhead, Biohaz restricted. Under sterile white light, 2 men, in black tactical gear, pushed white crates stamped with the biohazard symbol, each marked in bold Class 7 disposal. Ethan held his breath. From one crate, its lid ajar. Fabric rose faintly with emotion, breathing, or imagination. A gloved hand shoved it shut, the latch snapping down with a dry clack. Oh God, Clara whispered, her lips pale. They're not waiting. Till morning. One of the men stopped, pulled out a clipboard and read under a flashlight beam, NVO3, dispose before, 0400, priority units. P43 to P48. Ethan's heart dropped. P47, his throat scorched with acid fear, the air tasting like rust. The hair on his neck stood stiff as if death itself had brushed past. Graves gripped his shoulder, voice no louder than breath. Stay calm. His veteran's eyes were sharp blades. Rushing out now was suicide, they watched. The two mercenaries loaded crates onto a freight lift at the bay's end. Red lights blinked above the gate. A man in a white lab coat covering soft armor badge glinting the name Vance checked their list, scrawling signatures with a marker. Faster. Batch 1 must clear by 0 to 30. Finch's orders. No samples. Past 3 a.m. samples? Clara mouthed, fury. Sparking in her gaze, they call people samples. Crate jolted, its lid springing loose. A frail arm slid out. Ashen for tape still clinging, the needle line wrapped in faded adhesive. The guard cursed, shoving it back in, sealing the latch. Ethan's grip tore through his gloves on the vent's edge. In his mind, Lily's taped wrist flashed, overlapping with this horror until it splintered his breath. This isn't waste disposal. Ethan hissed through clenched teeth. It's human disposal. Graves nodded grimly, eyes locked on the floor, plan taped to a column. This bay branches 3 ways. North, freight elevators. We're using that. East, negative pressure prep rooms. West, cold storage. He pointed to the faded schematic. To reach treatment wards, we cut east. Clara scanned the tangle like someone who had lived inside the building's skin. There's a maintenance duct parallel to the prep rooms. If it hasn't been sealed, we can crawl through the false ceiling, drop into the observation gallery. Ethan nodded, but his eyes clung to the rolling white crates. Each wheel turn crushed his chest flat. In his head, Finch's voice echoed. Sometimes to achieve breakthroughs, sacrifices must be made. He saw it clearly now. The Langford Initiative had warped, not into a bridge to hope, but a machine of death, clothed in science. Let's move, Graves signaled. P-47's clock is ticking. He pulled back from the vent, slipping into a crawl space no wider than a fist. Clara unscrewed a service panel with a hidden driver from her sleeve. Above them, the false ceiling spread, like a web of ducts and cables. They crept through, insulation fibers clinging to their skin, each tremor of the panels threatening a collapse. Ethan's heart seized at every creak. 2 beams later, they hovered above a negative pressure ward. Through the grate, they saw 3 CS, bodies under sheets up to the chest, wrists abound with soft restraints. Monitors blinked with ghostly green traces. A technician adjusted the amber 4 bags labeled ND74. Same label, Clara whispered like Lily's. A nurse wheeled in a file cart. On the clipboard, Ethan caught sight of the codes P45 and P46. Both slashed through and read, marked transfer disposal. Ice water ran his spine. He braced himself against the truss to keep from falling. Inside his chest, a pit yawned, swallowing. All light except one fragile spark. Lily's weak smile, whispering, "Daddy, I'll draw a circle someday." Graves pressed a hand to his shoulder. One more room at the hall's end. If P47 isn't moved yet, she's there. Clara nodded, swiping her eyes. Whether from dust or tears, she couldn't tell. This way, there's an old junction in the ductwork. I used it once to replace a grease trap. It drops into the observation bay behind the main ward. They pushed forward, breath rasping fast under their masks. Overhead, the PA droned. Accelerate schedule. Truck arrives in 20 minutes. Priority group P for X. Each word was nailed into Ethan's chest. In his world, time was money. Here, time was life. He knew that if they lingered even a minute more, Lily would be sealed in a crate-like cargo. A junction hatch popped loose. They slipped into a pitch-black observation bay. Beyond the one-way glass, the main ward glared white. In the center, a small hospital bed was tangled with tubes and wires. On the wrist, a yellow plastic band glinted under the light. Ethan lunged forward. That yellow band, he had begged the nurse for it to make Lily less afraid of needles. He couldn't see her face beneath the drape, but that band could never be mistaken. "Lily," he breathed, the word barely sounding. Graves gripped his pistol tighter, eyes sweeping corners, counting. Cameras, Measuring exits, Clara set her hand on the rear access lever, her voice low but steady. Once we open this, there's no turning back. Either we break the door or break ourselves. Ethan stared through the glass for another beat. More Class 7 crates rattled down. The hall, a lab coat flashed past, imagined sting of antiseptic tearing his throat. His memories in the present fused. Crooked circles. Lily's sweat-damp hair. Finch's cold sermon on necessary sacrifice. He bared his teeth. Break the door. In that instant, the Langford Initiative was no longer a project, no longer a speech. It was the guillotine hanging over his child. Break the door. That words had barely left Ethan's lips when Graves pulled a palm-sized device from his chest rig. He pressed a flat metal plate into the seam between the double steel doors, flicked a switch. A dry, sharp snap. The magnetic lock cut out. Graves twisted the auxiliary handle and shoved hard with his shoulder. The door screeched open, leaving a slit just wide enough to slip through. Inside was cold, white, and sterile to the bone. Damn. Lamps poured down like ice. The air stung with antiseptic. In the center of the room, on a low hospital bed, lay a small figure. Lily. Her tiny arm was wrapped in gauze, her chest rising in fragile waves beneath a blanket. 4 lines hung in a tangle from metal poles, an infusion pump blinking out in different numbers. Ethan stumbled forward as though he'd fallen into an ocean trench. On her wrist gleamed the small yellow bracelet, exactly the one he had begged. The nurse to give her so she wouldn't be afraid of needles. Everything else on her tubes, tape, monitors, was what he had never agreed to, never permitted. Room clear. Graves swept the 4 corners like a shadow. Gun lowered, but eyes checking cameras, alarms, exits. Safe for now, but we've got less than 3 minutes. Clara was already at the bedside. Her eyes scanned everything at once, capturing the scene like a camera. 3 clear bags, saline, electrolytes, nutrition hanging in front. Behind them, half hidden by the IV stand, a 4th bag. Amber fluid threaded slightly through a Y connector into the main line. White label ND74. The pump ticked at 2.00 milliliters per hour, set to climb by incremental step-up. There it is, Clara breathed, fogging her mask. She pulled the slider clamp down on the line, pressed the stop button on the pump, opened the Y port, and yanked the ND7 for tubing free, capping it before air could backflow. Every move was sharp and exact, so quick the monitor only chirped once at the pressure change before settling back to steady green. Ethan froze, staring at the amber bag in Clara's hand, the poison that had just been flowing into his daughter. Nausea surged up his throat. He touched Lily's cheek, cold to the skin, eyelids twitching in sedation. At the bed's foot, the clipboard gleamed with typed letters. P47 transfer 0310. Beneath it, a signature box blank, the time already pre-printed. They were going to move her at 3:10, Ethan whispered. The wall clock ticked to 2:41. Each second slashed like a knife. Finch wants batch 1 done before 3, Clara said, eyes locked on the IV line. She lifted the amber bag and shoved it deep into her canvas pouch. This is evidence. Graves snapped his head around. Sound. From the hall came a faint beep. The door's lock had rebooted. He jammed a metal wedge into the latch, yanked a curtain across the porthole, then twisted the manual lock from inside. 2 minutes, he muttered. Clara bent closer, retaped Lily's injection site, and loosened the tourniquet to restore flow. She pressed her ear near the child's chest. Sweetheart, can you hear me? Breathe deep for me. Her palm rose and fell with the girl's fragile rhythm. Sometimes life-saving skills don't come from med school, but from nights spent mopping floors, watching monitors, and learning not to panic. Ethan knelt, his forehead almost on Lily's hand. Daddy's here, Lily. His voice cracked in the icy white room. Daddy's here? All the walls he had built in his life, steel discipline, CEO armor, iron language, crumbled in that single whisper. A shadow passed the window of the side door. Graves raised a fist. Silence. Cartwheels rolled outside and stopped at the main door. A hand rattled the handle, locked, then rolled on. Graves checked his watch, his jaw set in a thin line. Ethan scanned the tray at the bedside. Spare syringe lay ready, already fitted with a needle. Label adjunct to pale amber. Same series. His stomach turned cold. A backup dose, if the pump wasn't enough. Clara, his eyes flared. She understood without words. Wrapping the syringe in gauze, she slid it into the pouch beside the ND7 first aid. Evidence, she repeated like a mantra. The monitor shrieked a flat line. Pulse, SpO2 dropping, then bouncing back. Clara gripped Lily's hand. Come on, sweetheart. In, out. Good girl. The child's face eased. Numbers steadied. Fragile, but stable. Ethan rose, his tall frame casting a shadow over the harsh surgical light. He slid an arm under Lily's back, careful of the wires. She weighed almost nothing, light enough to break him. For the first time, not through reports or doctors' words, but with his own eyes, he saw. His daughter wasn't a special patient. She was a number, a P47 on a spreadsheet, trapped by people who used the language of science to cloak deceit. A sharp ting crackled from the intercom above. Transport team to base C batch 1 confirmed before 0300. Graves strode to the supply locker, yanked out a white lab coat and flung it at Ethan. Disguise if we get spotted, you push the bed and give orders like you own the place. I'll cover. Clara tugged her cap lower, pulled on a fresh mask. She pitched her voice flat, clipped, professional. Transfer P47 to a bay for retest before move. Practiced in her head, it came out mechanical, authoritative. Ethan glanced at her, the night shift janitor now standing like frontline staff, steady. Before the machines, between them now remained only one truth. Save the child. Graves pressed his ear to the door. Clear on the right. Left's got a cart rolling away. Best window is now. Pulled the wedge, counted down. 3, 2, 1. The door swung. A slap of cold corridor air hit them. Ethan bent low, cradling Lily, dragging the IV stand along. Clara clutched the chart folder in. Front like a passport. Graves took a rear pistol hidden in his sleeve, eyes cutting every angle. The bed wheels rattled on vinyl flooring, small but defiant. Every nerve in Ethan screamed to run, but he kept the pace steady, walking like a man who belonged here. His calm froze the fear for a heartbeat. They turned into a junction. At the far end, 2 men in black pushed a Class 7 crate. One glanced over. Clara lifted the file, her voice flat as glass. P47, retest order. Don't keep Finch waiting. Name was a password. The guard shrugged, exhaled irritation, and turned away. The three slipped past. Only once they vanished behind a blind corner did Ethan finally inhale. He bent, whispering into his daughter's ear. Daddy's taking you home. A drop slid down onto Lily's cheek, whether sweat or tear he didn't know. But for the first time in weeks, his heart didn't echo hollow. Behind them, in the room they'd left, the ND74 pump sat frozen on stop. In Clara's pouch, the amber bag and syringe clicked softly with each step, the sound of living evidence. Ahead stretched a long white corridor, taut as wire, leading them out of the death lab and straight into the final battle to force open a greater door, the door of justice. Ethan, Lily, ND74 SMG and AMF, forum to grab. Foreign. But who grabs Ethan Maui? Foreign. Fork Ethan, Clara, Lily, Royani, Goi Tam, Fork Grong Jangli. Foreign. Congo Lenkoi Jasong Roja Chapter. Chin Maui Sequa. The cold ting on the ceiling rang out faster and faster. The emergency lights in the corridor flashed red like veins thrashing wildly. Graves glanced at his watch, eyes darkening. They've detected the operating room tampering at most 60 seconds before someone arrives. Ethan clutched Lily tightly, dragging the IV stand along. Clara pressed the file folder to her chest. The canvas bag at her side, heavy with the amber pouch of ND74 and the adjunct AV living evidence. They cut a corner, rushing into the service corridor toward the freight elevator. The steel door. The end of the hall burst open just as they reached the intersection. two bulky shadows loomed. Mercenaries in soft armor, neck-guarded helmets, short SMGs tucked under their arms. They froze for a split second at the sight of a medical team. Then their mouths curled as if recognizing prey. Graves crouched, yanking Ethan and Claire against the wall. Two crisp shots cracked from his gun. Low, precise. The bullets tore near their legs, forcing the mercenaries to leap back from the doorway as if scorched. "Go!" he snarled, spinning the gurney half a turn, pushing the group into the freight shaft. The elevator door felt heavy, stubborn. Graves slammed the call button. The floor light crept downward at a mocking pace. Ethan bit back a curse, looking at Lily. Her breath was thread-thin. A metallic screech echoed through the ceiling. Then came sirens, not the internal alarm. Police sirens. The sound pierced concrete, swelling from the east loading bay. Graves startled, then smiled faintly in relief. "I sent an E7 distress code. The moment I cut the maglock, police are storming in." But at the far end of the hall, 3 more shadows appeared. Bullets carved pale streaks of light, rattling the reinforced glass of the side doors. Graves shoved Ethan down, his own body twisting to shield the gap. His shoulder jerked. Hit. His vision darkened for a heartbeat, then snapped back, sharp as a blade in the dark. "I'm fine," he hissed through his teeth, firing short bursts with his free hand, driving the gunman behind the pillars. "Graves." Ethan's voice cracked. Blood seeped dark through the black fabric at Graves' left shoulder. But the veteran moved as if the wound were no more than a mosquito bite. He pressed his hand hard to the blood, barking, "Shoulder, not lung. Get down, down."
Ow!
The freight elevator still hadn't arrived. The red digits counted down like fate itself. Clara's eyes darted a conductor under fire. "There's a maintenance. Shaft at the end. Mechanical lock. I can open it," she bolted, skidding on the vinyl floor before steadying, prying open a steel cabinet. The padlock was old, stubborn as hatred, but her calloused hands knew the angles of time. Click. The hatch sprang open, revealing an iron ladder plunging into black. At that instant, the freight elevator doors slid open to emptiness. No car, just the hollow shaft. The cab had already left. Single figure swept in from the opposite AU entrance. Finch with a folded gut and eyes that skimmed everything without touching. Finch stopped mid-step, gazing at Ethan, Clara, and Lily. Then he smiled. "All present? Say goodbye." He yanked the local alarm. Red light strobed madly, bells shrieking. "Get them." Finch dropped the mask, his voice sharp and cracking like glass. The mercenaries unleashed fire like hail. Graves hurled himself into their line of fire, sliding on one knee, 3 shots snapping off. One man collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. The other 2 swung wide, guns aimed at center mass at Ethan, who was holding Lily. The moment. Stretched into forever, Clara saw the muzzle aligned perfectly with the golden bracelet on the little girl's wrist. Every sound cut off in her mind, leaving only a straight line from barrel to a child's heart. There was no job description for the next act, no order, no permission. She lunged. Claire's body slammed into Ethan and Lily, knocking them off the bullet's path. Gunfire shredded the air. A violent jolt tore through her body, then another. Heat. Ice. Blood blossomed like red flowers on gray fabric, soaking the canvas bag at her side. Ethan staggered, clutching Lily by instinct, crashing against the rail. Clara, his own voice shattered like glass. Clara slid to the floor, one hand still gripping the bag as if cradling another child. Her lips moved. "Don't let them touch her," Graves growled like a cornered beast. He shoved Ethan and Lily toward the maintenance hatch Clara had opened, planting himself as a living barricade. "Down," he barked, eyes locked on his targets. 2 more shots. One mercenary clutched his chest and fell. The other staggered back like a yanked shadow. In the distance, police loudspeakers roared into the halls. "Police, drop your weapons." Heavy boots pounded from all directions, riot shields glinting like silver scales. Doors banged at the loading bay, hammers smashing locks, voices shouting. Rehearsed commands. Finch whipped his head around, saw the net closing. He slinkered it into a side access hatch, slamming it shut like a rat into a pipe. Graves aimed to follow, but his shoulders screamed, tearing open. He groaned, switched hands, firing another burst to pin the last mercenaries to the floor. Clara gasped, vision fading into blood. Ethan lunged, pressing hard on her side wound. Clara, look at me. Wanted to summon something beautiful, some promise. But what came out were only two rough words. Thank you. She smiled faintly, lips bloodied like a child winning a secret game. Lily, I must grow up to draw circles, she whispered, and as if afraid he might forget. She shoved the canvas bag into his hand. Evidence. Graves darted forward, hauling Clara, dragging her toward the hatch. Go, he roared, covering the door. With his own body, bullets chewed the steel frame, sparks spraying like stars. He pulled a smoke pin and tossed it into the hall. The plume burst wide, swallowing the gunmen, cutting their sightline. Ethan clutched Lily to his chest, sliding. Down the iron ladder, missing steps without fear, Clara followed, heavy against Graves's shoulder. Blood striped the rungs. Police sirens swelled closer, voices overlapping. Team A, Northern Wing. Team B, secure the service routes. Hold perimeter. They hit the subfloor. Damp, cold concrete. Corridor. Ahead glowed blue-red light through a rising shutter. Night wind rushed in like a promise. Ethan hugged Lily. She burrowed into his neck, whimpering, Daddy's here. Almost done. Graves carried Clara. Fireman style, his own face pale. From blood loss, but his eyes scanning like radar. Behind them, officers shouted, Clear. As they swept down the ladder, weapons clattering, someone dropping their gun, they broke through the bay. The final shutter cracked open, floodlights spearing their eyes, a wall of riot shields ahead. Behind them, ambulances, reflective vests, gleaming. Get them out, an officer yelled, pointing. Two medics sprinted in, lifting Lily from Ethan's arms with practiced rhythm. Pulse check, oxygen mask, portable monitor. Another team slid Clara onto a stretcher, bandages reeling in seconds. Ethan followed Lily's stretcher like a man unned, about to rush toward Clara when Graves blocked him, bloodied hand gripping his arm. Stay with her. I've got this. His voice was low, steady, the last pillar in the storm. Behind them, in the green haze, police cuffed to mercenaries, pressing faces into cold concrete. Handcuffs clicked like the final notes of a broken song. Ethan glanced back for a second. Finch had already vanished into the service maze, a shadow slipping through grates. With his rats, rage rose in his throat, but before him now were Lily, Clara's fading breath and Graves' blood-soaked shoulder. He clutched the canvas bag Clara had thrust upon him. The evidence rattled inside like another beating heart. He looked up above a helicopter searchlight carved a white circle, sealing the picture of this night. A nurse lifted her head and shouted, Family of P-47? Me? Ethan's voice steadied like a freshly driven nail. I'm her father. The ambulance door slammed shut on Lily, red-blue lights washing his face, scrubbing away the remnants of night with the colors of justice. In the vehicle beside them, doctors pressed on Clara's wound.
Oh.
Their 1, 2, 3 counting matched the machine's heartbeat. Graves dropped to one knee, breath hissing, but forced himself up, holding steady with sheer will. He met Ethan's eyes. In the veteran's gaze was an unspoken alarm. The fight wasn't over. Finch had oozed away like oil down a drain. But the blood spilled behind the door tonight was enough to make an entire city open its eyes. Ethan nodded, not to Graves, not to the police, but to himself. He climbed into Lily's ambulance, both hands gripping her small, cold fingers. As the doors closed, sirens shredded the night. And somewhere inside the blood-soaked canvas bag, the amber pouch and adjunctive vial rattled softly like a vow. A child would ever again be called a specimen. The wail of the ambulance siren tore through the night, pushing back the city's darkness. The ER doors swung open, cold white light flooding down, reflecting off Lily's pale face. Nurses quickly attached. 4 lines fitted an oxygen mask, and the doctor's urgent voice cut through the chaos. Weak pulse, but still present. Prepare the cardiac stimulant. Ethan stood frozen outside, his heart locked in a vice. Lily's tiny hands, once so used to clutching his whenever they crossed the street, now lay curled icy under the white sheet. But then, only minutes later, the monitor flickered with steadier rhythms. Fragile pink returned to her cheeks. Ethan bent forward, exhaling as if he had just been pulled from the edge of an abyss. In the next R room, Clara lay motionless, her uniform soaked through with blood. The doctor leaned over her, examining the wound with a grim frown. Bullet passed through the shoulder. Nerve damage in the brachial plexus. Risk of permanent disability. Prepare for surgery. Through the haze of shock, Clara still opened her eyes, searching for a familiar face. Ethan stepped in, gripping her icy hand. His voice was hoarse. "Hero, you saved my daughter. Swear I'll take care of Maya, no matter the cost. Surgery, treatment, everything. You won't have to worry about a thing." Clara gave the faintest nod, her lips trembling, then closed her eyes, surrendering to the doctors who wheeled her into the operating room. Out in the hospital corridor, the TV blared a breaking report. Breaking news: Dr. Gregory Finch, mastermind of illegal research. Still at large, FBI issues nationwide warrant. His photo appeared in a white lab coat, with a half-smile twisted with mockery that made every viewer's skin crawl. The anchor's voice rang clear. "Any information leading to the arrest of Gregory Finch will be kept strictly confidential. Federal authorities urged the public to remain vigilant." Ethan clenched his fist tight. He knew the fight wasn't over. Finch was still out there. And only when the man was dragged into the light would children like Lily, like Maya, truly be freed. From the shadows, inside the ICU, Lily's breathing held steady under the harsh white glow. In the operating theater, Clara fought for each fragile breath against death itself. And Ethan, standing between those two closed doors, understood one thing with absolute clarity. He was no longer just a CEO protecting his reputation. He was a father, a human being, bound to pursue the truth to the very end. That morning, every national news channel cut its broadcast to air breaking news. The FBI had raided JFK International Airport at dawn and arrested Gregory Finch along with Vance as the two attempted to flee on a private jet. The footage aired live. Finch, his shirt wrinkled, his face stunned, both hands cuffed tightly behind his back. Vance tried to scream, but his shouts were drowned out by the swarm of reporters and the relentless clicking of hundreds of cameras. Both men were shoved into a police van, a scene that left viewers both furious and vindicated. Inside the top-floor office of Langford Group, Ethan silently watched the report. When the anchor read the final line, "The Langford Initiative has officially collapsed," he arose, stepped out to the press podium where dozens of journalists had been waiting. His voice was deep and resolute. "I am Ethan Langford, and I take responsibility for allowing such corruption to fester under my roof. If the shareholders wish to sue, they may sue me. But from today forward, Langford will walk only one path: science that is honest, transparent, and humane." The room erupted. Some reporters were stunned, while others were enraged. Yet among the crowd and the eyes of patients and their families, a spark of trust began to shine. 1 week later, Ethan officially signed the charter, establishing the Langford Brooks Foundation, with Clara as co-founder. The name carried two meanings. Langford, a reminder that wealth and power must not escape accountability. Brooks, to honor the janitor who had dared to shout in the middle of a signing ceremony, who had shed blood to save patients. The principles of the foundation were engraved and displayed in the main hall. Transparency. All research data must be made. Public fairness. No patient will be judged by wealth or poverty. Respect for life. No individual shall ever be treated as experimental property. On the day of the foundation's launch, Ethan and Clara signed the charter together in front of flashing cameras, surrounded by hundreds of patient families. They did not look at each other. Yet in that moment, they both knew a bond had formed, not only out of suffering, but out of hope. Among the very first cases approved, two names stood out: Lily Langford, age 10, and Maya Brooks, age 16. Both officially became the first patients to receive the experimental gene therapy. As Ethan signed the confirmation, he gave Clara's hand a firm squeeze. "Let's begin. This isn't just for my daughter, but for every child out there." Clara nodded, her eyes shining with a power Ethan had never once seen in any boardroom. The power of faith and of sacrifice. 1 year had passed. New York basked in the glow of early summer sunlight. The headquarters of the Langford Brooks Foundation, once a block of cold concrete, had transformed into a place brimming with life, loomed brightly in the front garden. The walls were covered with paintings created by child patients, and laughter filled every corridor. People no longer called it a research center, but by a warmer name, the home without gates. Lily sat at her easel, her once frail hands now strong enough to hold a brush and draw a perfect circle. When her line finally closed, she broke into radiant laughter, running to show her father. Ethan lifted her into his arms, his eyes shimmering, an image he once thought he would never see again. Across the hall, Mia sat at the piano, her fingers, once thin and weak, had regained strength, gliding across the keys. Pure, innocent music filled the space, drawing tears from many parents seated in the front rows. Together, Lily and Maya stepped onto the stage during the Foundation's first anniversary celebration. The two girls held high a painting they had made together, a house without gates, without locks. In the painting, dozens of people of every skin color and age stood hand in hand, forming a circle beneath an open-roofed house with no fences dividing them. The auditorium erupted in applause, not only for the painting, but for the hope it symbolized. Ethan and Clara stood side by side, silently watching the scene. They knew that to reach this moment, there had been blood, tears, and sacrifices that seemed impossible to bear. Yet in return, a new kind of home had been built, not from bricks and stone, but from trust and humanity. As sunlight streamed through the tall glass panes, the announcer's voice rang out like a message to everyone present. No door opens on its own. It takes people willing to guard it, to sacrifice so that the light may enter. Ethan leaned slightly toward Clara and whispered, "This is where we truly belong." Clara smiled, her eyes glistening. And in that moment, they both knew their story did not end here. It was only beginning with a home without gates where every heart would always be welcome.